Welcome to Left the Chat. We are not for budget cards, we are not for expensive cards, we just have left the chat on the table. An EDH deck building channel to help you make synergistic decks for games of Commander. In today's video, we'll be looking at building a deck for Temmet, Naktamun's Will. We are looking to make a deck that is synergistic, so let's take a look at him. Temmet, Naktamun's Will, is a 4/4 legendary zombie wizard that costs 2 white, blue, and a black. And his stat line reads Vigilance, Menace. Whenever you attack, draw a card, then discard a card. And whenever you draw a card, the zombies you control get +1/+1 until the end of the turn. Most people will be focusing on this drawing a card to make zombies larger, and that's exactly what we want to do here as well. We're going to be focusing on trying to get more zombie lords out, creating more zombies through tokens, and drawing more cards to buff them even larger. We're likely going for a win con through battle, and so that our focus needs to be getting them as big as possible, as quick as possible. So let's take a look at drawing cards. Cards like Mystic Remora and Teferi's Ageless Insight are ways that we can consistently draw cards from our deck, without needing too much from us, the player. Cards like Crypt Breaker, Jason Bright Glowing Prophet, Ret 2 Mystic, and Undead Augur are some examples of our situational draw, where Crypt Breaker lets us tap zombies to draw a card, Jason Bright allows us to draw a card by having our creatures die, as well as Undead Augur. Ret 2 Mystic instead allows us to cycle away the cards we don't need in hand by making them all have cycling for 1 and a blue. There are some other cards in the deck that support us in wheeling and taking the cards out of our opponent's hands as well, but drawing us a new set of cards. Jace's Archivist is one of the few non-zombies in the deck and allows this to happen multiple times. Teferi's Puzzle Box changes cards in each player's hands on their upkeep, and then Windfall and Days Undoing are 2 spells that will discard all cards in hands and redraw cards to replace them. Finally, we have some cards that are going to help us by drawing in a burst-like manner. What do I mean? Well, our first example is Corpse Augur. When it dies, you draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is the number of creature cards in target player's graveyard. Most of the cards I'm about to mention are just like Corpse Augur. Forgotten Creation will allow you to cycle your own hand and draw a new set of cards on upkeep. And similarly, Graveborn Muse will draw you cards for the number of zombies you control. God Eternal Bontu allows you to sacrifice any number of permanents and then draw that many cards. Prophet of the Scarab, very similarly, draws cards equal to the number of zombies you control as it enters. Making zombies. To grow Temmet's army, we need to consider some cards that can give us more zombie tokens, so that we have a greater, wider army to fight our opponents. Cards like Diagraph Colossus reward us for casting zombie spells, and will put more tokens onto the battlefield when we do so. Similarly, Gerolf the Fleshwright will allow us to create a zombie every time we cast a second spell on turn. Ghoul-Caller Geyser allows us to sacrifice another creature and create another zombie from that creature, or multiple. Ghoulish Procession says that when a non-token creature dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decay. Headless Rider says that when another non-token zombie you control dies, create a zombie. And Jadar Ghoul-Caller of Nephalia will create one on every end step. Similarly, we have Verena, who allows us to exile cards from our graveyard to create more zombies. Wizened Mentor, who allows us to have zombies anytime someone uses an ability of a permanent. And Zahur, Glory's Fast. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, we'll create a tapped zombie token as well. Attached to these cards are some other cards that will help us to make more zombies through copying. Cleaver Scar will copy the creatures we already control by splitting them in half. Rada Dravik will allow our legendary creatures to be copied without falling to the rule. And the Scarab God can let us exile target creatures from an opponent's graveyard to create a token copy of it as a zombie. Finally, Necroduality is a way that whenever a non-token zombie we control enters, we'll make a second one of them. Attacking with the Horde. Once our army is existing, we have some spells of different categories to help us take over the game. Zombies, like Binding Mummy, say that whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under our control, we can tap target artifact or creature, allowing us to make an open space to attack another opponent's board. Priest of the Crossing allows us to get counters on our creatures and make them bigger, and reward us for attacking but having creatures die from our side. Swiftfoot Boots will be fantastic in helping our commander, whose own stats allow him to probably be the largest on the battlefield for every draw, giving him a chance to attack alone as well. There are 2 zombies that allow other creatures to fly, and so we have included Eternal Skylord and Hordewing Scarb, that by simply being on the board means that all zombies gain flying. And then of course, a selection of Lords. These zombies simply give +1/+1 to all zombies. They are more than the 5 I'm about to mention in the deck, but these ones are simply giving a bigger buff to all the zombies, not to mention that Temmet does that himself. Cemetery Reaper, Death Baron, Diagraph Captain, Lord of the Accursed, and Risen Executioner are the 5 that will focus primarily on giving that buff to everybody. While Cemetery Reaper can create more zombies, Diagraph Captain can have our opponents lose a life, Lord of the Accursed can give all the zombies menace, and Risen Executioner is able to be retrieved from the graveyard on its own. 2 other cards to mention in this area have multiple conditions that support numbers of different things and therefore are just helping out our army. We have On Wings of Gold and Renewed Solidarity that come in the precon. Both of them give the creature type of zombie the ability to be buffed, and On Wings of Gold will create additional zombies when cards leave the graveyard, and Renewed Solidarity will make copies of zombies that have entered into the battlefield. Zombies being zombies. Alongside attacking, creating zombies, copying zombies, giving them additional support in attacking, we have 2 creatures that will help drain our opponents. Embalmed Descendant says that whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Similarly, Wayward Servant says whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Zombies are also known for collecting themselves back out of the graveyard, so we have 4 cards here that do a similar thing. We have Zul Ashur Lich Lord, who allows you to cast target zombie creature cards from your graveyard. Lost Monarch of Ifnir, that will put cards into the graveyard and pull them back out. Lord of the Undead, that is a zombie lord, and also will allow you to return a zombie card from your graveyard to the hand. An Apprentice Necromancer that will sacrifice itself to put a zombie creature back onto the battlefield. Removal. As we are looking to take over via combat, the removal package is quite light, but have been carefully selected to support a myriad of different issues. Austere Command gives us the opportunity to stop artifacts and enchantments that might be pushing us back. Consuming Tide wipes the board of non-land permanents. Dam allows us to either make a single target removal or raft the board. Fleshbag Marauder is a great way to have the other players sacrifice a creature. Generous Gift is a target non-land removal spell. Ablation is able to remove a target non-land, but can even be used on your own tokens. And then once that has been shuffled into a library, the player draws 2 cards. Swords to Plowshares is an obvious include as it exiles a creature that has been stubborn and hard to be removed. Ramp package. Finally, in our ramp package, I have included quite a few rocks. Most of these cards came with the precon itself anyway. Arcane Signet, Commander's Sphere, obvious ways to cast multicolored spells, the talismans of each of the different shared colors, Crowded Crypt to create zombies but also use black mana, Midnight Clock to help us draw many cards if we can get through its ridiculous 12 ticks, but also produce blue mana, and finally Warren Soul Trader, a way to create treasure tokens and increase our ramp through sacrificing additional tokens that we might actually have. Lands. I've honestly kept the lands kind of how they were. just making sure I finished out the cycles of bounce lands or check lands, etc. But this deck does come with some interesting cards. Unholy Grotto can allow us to put a zombie from our graveyard back on top of our library. Accursed Juneyard is a new card that allows us to regenerate one of our zombies. And the 3 deserts in blue, white and black will allow us to use them as a cycling way if we need to at the end of the game, just make our zombies bigger. Though there's a lot of tapped lands in this deck, I would highly recommend obviously building lands the way you like to. There's a different amount that people prefer to spend on lands, and some people like basics over dual lands anyway. Build it the way you want. The one card I included that I think is worth mentioning is Rogue's Passage. It would be great if at the last moment you need to attack with your commander and have been able to draw lots of cards that he can then go in for the win. So Temmet needs to be unblockable, and that's our only real way in the deck that we do that, other than tapping down other creatures. Finally, Bojuka Bog was not in the deck and makes a sensible addition, as though we don't want to target our own graveyard, it's always good to be able to exile someone else's. And that's it. We've left the chaff on the table. Just the cards we need to make a synergistic deck and work with Temmet. If you have your own ideas of how you would edit this to be more synergistic, or if you had your own ideas of how you would build a deck, please put them in the comments below. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this video and about what you would do with this deck. If you liked the video, make sure that you give it a thumbs up and like it. And if you'd like to see more, please consider subscribing to the channel, where I plan on creating more decks like this for the commanders coming out in Aether Drift and beyond. If you want a full look at the deck list, there's a link to Moxfield down below as well. Make sure you click that. Until next time, thanks for watching, and make sure you have left the chaff on the table.